It's just wonderful to have all of you in here, and welcome to Parliament if it's the first time that you've been in here. My name's Catherine West. I'm the member for Hornsey and Wood Green, and as has been said, I have votes very soon. My boss, David Lammy, is on his feet. You can see on the green panel there. He's just stood up to give the closing remarks on the King's Speech, which is the very controversial vote on what's happening in the Middle East. And you'll be pleased to know that Labor has a very strong amendment, which many of you will be wanting to look up later. Do grab an order paper on your way out as a memory of being here in Parliament. There's also a Diwali event which you'll be all welcome to attend down in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association room. Go in and just say hello. It's being organised by some friends who do cross-party work here in Parliament, and it would be nice just for you to say hello and see that it's not all we have such a diversity of a programme here in the House of Commons. So it's a real pleasure to be speaking, and so many old friends from the Labour Foreign Policy Group, and also to meet new faces from the European Foundation for South Asian Studies. And one of the pleasures of doing this job, of course, is to collaborate and cooperate with our friends in Europe. But given China's role in Southeast Asia, that cooperation across borders with like-minded people is vital. And as events in Gaza and Ukraine have demonstrated in the past 2 years, we are in a difficult, dangerous and increasingly unpredictable world. And given China's growing assertiveness, we owe it to ourselves to engage proactively, to share our ideas as to how to respond. Our relationship with China is one of the most pressing strategic foreign policy challenges that we face, and is one which we're emphasising will be at the heart of the UK's Indo-Pacific strategy should Labour win the election next year. In the past 30 years or so, the China which I lived in Nanjing during my year there in 1996, a China full of promise, economic growth and the hope for a new beginning and engagement with the wider world, has given way to an ever-increasing authoritarian streak under the current president. In recent years, this has crystallised into an assertive foreign policy with increased expenditure for the People's Liberation Army, installations in international waters, a bellicose position on Taiwan and an ever-growing Chinese naval presence. And as commentators have warned in recent years, worrying new developments in technology and cyber threats. Labour welcomes the AI summit held by the Prime Minister in recent weeks and the announcements made by Vice President Kamala Harris in the Biden administration on the importance of artificial intelligence. That's something which we must prioritise, but it's something which there is definitely scope to work with China on as well. And since we live in a globalised world with foreign policy interconnected, there is the question of China's presence in developing nations, an increasingly important factor to be considered in international fora. I met this morning with Mr. Jaishankar, who's here in the UK at the moment, and we discussed the presence of India in many countries in Africa, as well as the UK's presence, as well as other countries' presence, and the way that we can work together for a peaceful presence in developing countries in the global south, and whatever name countries wish to be called themselves. I'm not sure whether global south is the current best word, but that's what we're using currently here in the UK Parliament. Others might have other terms for what we used to call developing countries, but that very much is of a way of looking at things which is a bit patronising and looking down. What we want is partnerships and equality. Sometimes I worry that the UK influence in Africa, for example, could be at risk as the focus in the UK turns inward, and coupled with the reduced overseas development funds, this could allow either China or other nations to project more power financially and politically in those countries. The drop in funding to the world's poorest and most conflict and climate-affected regions of Africa, the Caribbean and the Middle East has led to a sense of helplessness post-pandemic, with the progress made in tackling hunger and preventable diseases plateauing since COVID struck in 2019. In the face of a British retreat from our historic responsibilities, other nations, including China, have stepped into the breach. The Labour Party is alive to that fact, and we are committed, through the work of Lisa Nandy MP, who's the Shadow International Development lead, it's our clear aim to return to 0.7 as fiscally possible as soon as we can when we get in, hopefully, in the new year. These major challenges coincide with the UK adjusting to post-Brexit realities as we face outward to the world. Questions over the role of the Commonwealth, rebuilding our relationship with European partners and the stability of our own economy are crucial as we shape our approach to foreign policy. But far from being a council of despair, we do have a vision of a different foreign policy, one in which Britain reconnects with our partners on the world stage. Sometimes I question whether our voice is listened to as much as it used to be, with the short-termism blighting the government's approach to the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. And with over 5 or 6 different foreign secretaries just since I've been elected since 2015, we've got a bit of a sense of chop and change in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Labour cannot be complacent, but if we work hard and continue to highlight the failings of the current government, I've no doubt that Keir Starmer will be in Downing Street as Prime Minister in under a year's time, giving a boost to Britain's foreign policy and allowing us to supercharge our approach to China and set out a clear strategy for engagement. There's every reason to understand the concern that some of the more hawkish voices in Parliament describe the situation in China, and also concerns that I have on real human rights abuses committed by the Chinese government, for example, the ongoing repression of the Uyghur minority and other minorities in the Xinjiang, the situation for freedom of religion or belief in the Tibet area, and also some of the growing authoritarianism in Hong Kong following the legislation of the National Security Act. The shot across the bows and the very vocal stance on our relationship with China is a wake-up call to progressives, providing a challenge to balance and express our concerns about these human rights issues, but also to balance that with wanting to cooperate where we can with China in the region. So that is the question. Should Labour become the question? Should Labour become the government? How we balance that need to cooperate on climate change and the economy, as well as maintaining our own values. My colleague David Lammy, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, laid out our approach to China earlier this year at Chatham House, and how the Labour approach will differ from the chop and change approach of the current government. The divided and inconsistent messaging on China can be seen, for example, with the recent appointment of Lord Cameron, who of course was famously photographed with Xi Jinping drinking a pint at his local pub in Oxfordshire. And times have changed quite a lot, and I don't think that Rishi Sunak would be taking the same picture, not least because he doesn't drink pints, but because I think he might question how the optics of that particular look. We've also highlighted the breaches of international obligations in the Sino-British Agreement on Hong Kong. For example, we've seen some inconsistency where ministers might tweet out condemnation but are consistently behind Labour and the will of Parliament on the British judges question, the BNO passport holder remit and targeted sanctions. We will obviously have an open mind as to how Lord Cameron interprets his role, but we would like to see a more clear-eyed and consistent position on the UK's approach to China. For our part, Labour wishes to introduce an audit of the relationship that all of our government departments have in relation to China. For example, our business departments, for example, our health service, which has got some quite robust legislation on, for example, PPE and the purchase of PPE from regions in the world where there could be labour rights abuses. But in the end, we come down to what we call the 3 Cs. Challenge, compete and cooperate. Strong on national security, standing firm on human rights in the best traditions of the Labour Party, but also cooperating on global health and climate change and trade. Now, on the question of climate change, of course, we're watching carefully what European partners do, and I'm sure we'll get into the detail of that. For example, I know Germany is doing a lot on electric vehicles and on solar panels and so on. What level of engagement, what level of capability, sovereign capability, individual nations wish to have, and we will be watching that very carefully as it develops in the European Union. And we will also continue to be challenging in any way that we feel that we need to. To conclude, we were also looking at obviously enhancing our ongoing relationships with other countries in the region, Japan, South Korea, India, and all the democracies in the region. David Lammy is hoping to visit India later on this year, or probably now, earlier on in 2024. And I myself have also done a lot of work engaging in Pakistan. I visited myself Pakistan in 2015 and also have visited in Bangladesh, having a large Bangladesh community in my constituency. I hope the next Labour government will be able to engage with the region, bringing to bear our joint commitments to human development, climate, science and non-strategic technology. Our approach to China policy for Britain will be grounded, level-headed and sensible, a Britain reconnected with Europe, with our Indo-Pacific partners and with the Global South, and a Britain which is in lockstep with its partners, prepared to stand up for what we believe in, prepared to develop an industrial strategy which promotes trade but accepts a level of protection for our industries where it's in the national interest to do so, aware of emerging threats and unwaveringly clear and with increased coherence in our relationship with China. Thank you.